trade season is heating up in Boston, and the Celtics front office is clearly not done yet. With the preseason creeping closer and the final stretch of the offseason ticking down, Brad Stevens finds himself at a pivotal moment. The Celtics have made some bold moves already, shipping out key pieces and signing others that raised eyebrows. But there's still a sense that something more is coming, something bigger. And the question everyone's asking right now is simple. What's the next step? The buzz around the league is that Boston is actively exploring deals, not just to tweak the roster, but to solve a bigger puzzle. Stevens has been working toward getting under that infamous first tax apron, a move that suggests he's thinking about more than just this season. He's thinking long-term flexibility, maybe even eyeing future signings and a sustainable core around Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. The challenge? Balancing competitiveness with financial responsibility, a tough tightrope, especially when you're trying to win a championship. But here's where things get interesting. Reports have started to surface with potential trade targets and a clearer picture of what Boston might be looking to address before opening night. And yeah, we're talking about more than just roster depth. This is about filling key holes and finding value while keeping that salary structure in check. Brad has never been one to make splashy, unnecessary trades. Every move has purpose. Every piece has to fit. And if the Celtics are going to make another run, they need to nail the next move. So, let's get into some of the possibilities. One trade that sparked conversation is a hypothetical swap involving Anthony Simons and DeMar DeRozan. Now, at first glance, this one feels a little off. Boston would be sending out Simons and a second-round pick, possibly the one from Portland, in exchange for DeRozan. And while the names involved might turn heads, you've got to dig deeper to really evaluate this one. DeRozan is an established scorer, no doubt. He's got experience, he's got a mid-range game that still kills teams, and he brings leadership. But how does he actually fit in Boston's system? That's the tricky part. DeRozan is an older player on a 2-year deal, while Simons is younger, more dynamic on the perimeter, and only on a 1-year contract. Financially, the Celtics would be absorbing more salary, even with the second-round sweetener added. And with Stevens clearly aiming to shed money, this trade almost contradicts that strategy. Plus, the overlap between DeRozan and Jaylen Brown is real. Both are slashers. Both rely heavily on isolation and mid-range creation. Would they complement each other or clog the offense? From Portland's side, getting a younger guard like Simons makes sense. They'd be resetting their timeline, getting off DeRozan's contract, and acquiring a player who could thrive with more usage. But for Boston, it's hard to see the upside, especially if Tatum, who's still recovering and potentially missing time, returns next year. You got to ask, does DeRozan really raise this team's ceiling, or does he just add another mouth to feed without solving the spacing issues Boston sometimes struggles with? So, while the idea of adding a name like DeRozan is tempting, the reality is a little murky. This might be one of those trades that looks better on paper than it does on the court. Brad Stevens is all about fit, and DeRozan just might not be that guy for what the Celtics are trying to build. Now let's pivot to something that might make a bit more sense, and that's a potential deal involving Sam Hauser. Now, Hauser's name has been floating around trade talks for a while. He's the kind of player a lot of teams are interested in, a dead-eye shooter on a cheap deal who knows his role. If there's a commodity in today's NBA, it's shooting, and Hauser checks that box. So it's not surprising that a team like the Phoenix Suns could be in play here. In this scenario, Boston sends out Hauser and brings in someone like Nick Richards. This is where things get strategic. Not only does Richards bring size and flexibility at the forward or small ball center spot, but the Celtics would also win on the financial side of things again. That's been the common theme, moving contracts that save money while filling real holes on the roster. The idea is to find value, and Richards represents exactly that. He's shown flashes in limited minutes, and on a team like Boston, he could thrive with more opportunity. The Suns, on the other hand, could use Hauser as a low-cost replacement for someone like Grayson Allen, whose contract is a bit more expensive. With the shooting talent around Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, adding another spacer like Hauser could make their offense even more dangerous. And for Boston's angle, they've got other shooters on the roster to fill in the gaps. They lose some perimeter shooting, Yes, but they gain versatility and help at a position of need. Plus, Richards fits the Celtics mold. Hardworking, high motor, and still young enough to grow within their system. If Boston is looking for players who can contribute now, but won't clog their future cap space, this is exactly the kind of deal that makes sense. It's not flashy. It won't lead SportsCenter, but it makes the team better while helping the books. That's Brad Stevens' brand. But maybe the most compelling trade idea comes out of Utah, and it's one that had a lot of fans talking. The Jazz and Celtics have history when it comes to trade deals, and with Danny Ainge running the show in Salt Lake City, it's no surprise that both sides might be open to doing business again. This deal would once again involve Sam Hauser, but the big name here is Walker Kessler. Now, Kessler is the kind of young big man that teams don't usually let go of easily. He's shown he can rebound, protect the rim, and even stretch the floor a bit. He's not a superstar, but he's the kind of player who fills a role perfectly, especially in Boston, where the center position is still somewhat unsettled. Sure, Neemias Queta had a great showing in EUROBASKET, and the Celtics have guys like Luke Kornet and Xavier Tillman in the mix. But let's be real. If you could plug in a consistent, high-upside big like Kessler into the rotation, why wouldn't you? The fit is almost seamless. He doesn't need touches to be effective. He rebounds, he blocks shots, and he runs the floor. He's basically tailor-made to anchor a second unit or even start if needed. And with the uncertainty around the long-term durability of Boston's frontcourt, adding someone like Kessler gives you security, now and for the future. In return, Utah gets Hauser, who they can use as another weapon on the perimeter, plus a second-round pick. Not a bad deal for a team that's still figuring out its direction. And to sweeten the pot, Boston also gets a familiar face back in SVI Mikhailik, a guy who's been with the team before and knows the system. He's not going to light it up every night, but he's a capable shooter who can step in off the bench and keep the offense flowing. Now, of course, if this trade would go down, someone on the Celtics roster would need to be waived. And the most logical candidate right now seems to be Xavier Tillman. Look, it's just not working out. There was hope that he could be a mini Al Horford, but that promise hasn't materialized. He's struggled to find a consistent role, and when roster spots are this valuable, you can't afford to keep players who aren't contributing. So here's the big picture. Each of these trade ideas represents a different path forward. The DeRozan deal is a gamble on experience and scoring. The Hauser for Richards move is a bet on depth and balance. And the Kessler trade? That's the one that might change the ceiling of this team. It's the kind of smart, forward-thinking move that could solidify Boston's rotation and put them in a better position to contend, not just this year, but in seasons to come. But even with all these potential trades floating around, the reality is that Brad Stevens and the Celtics are working with a shrinking window. Not necessarily because the talent is fading. Far from it. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are both entering their prime, and the team is still stacked with key contributors who know how to win. But in terms of flexibility, money, and long-term structure, the window to make smart, impactful decisions is tighter than ever. The new collective bargaining rules have made life harder for teams hovering near or above a luxury tax, and Boston's front office is clearly reacting to that pressure. Every move matters now, not just for this year's playoff run, but for the ability to reload and build around the Jays in the future. That's the hidden layer behind all these conversations about the first apron. It's not just about cutting costs. It's about staying alive in the future trade and free agent markets. And if you're serious about competing for multiple years, that has to be part of the equation. It's also why some of the names being floated in these discussions, like Hauser, Tillman, or even Pritchard, aren't just throw-ins. They're valuable role players who could help other teams right now. Sam Hauser, in particular, has grown into a legitimate threat from deep, and his movement without the ball gives Boston a spacing element that's hard to replicate. That's why moving him would only make sense if the return addresses a bigger weakness, like rim protection or playmaking. It's not just about shipping guys out. It's about upgrading strategically. And the truth is, the Celtics don't have to make a trade. But if they do, it has to serve multiple goals. Improve the team today, ease the cap situation, and open doors for the seasons to come. And look, for all the buzz around potential trades, there's also a reality check here. Brad Stevens has been patient for a reason. This roster is already one of the strongest in the league. Tatum is a top-5 player when healthy. Brown is an all-NBA talent. Derek White and Drew Holiday are one of the best defensive backcourts in the league. Kristaps Porzingis adds size, shooting, and versatility, and Al Horford brings veteran leadership and playoff poise. This team isn't chasing relevance, it's chasing a championship. But staying at that level requires constant fine-tuning. And if there's an opportunity to add someone like Walker Kessler or flip depth into a more consistent contributor, that's the kind of tweak that could pay off big when it matters most. There's also a sense that Stevens wants to give this current group a fair shot before blowing anything up. And that's fair. The core has earned that. But he also knows how brutal the Eastern Conference is shaping up to be. The Bucks, the Sixers, the Knicks, and even the Cavs have all gotten stronger or more cohesive. There's no coasting through this regular season. And that's where the depth questions start to creep in. Can this bench hold its own when the stars sit? Can Boston survive a cold streak from 3 or an injury to a key big man? Those are the concerns that keep front offices up at night. And that's why these minor trades can make a major impact. Not because of who's headlining the deal, but because of how it balances the roster and protects the team from volatility. Take the center rotation, for example. Right now, it's solid, but it's not set in stone. Al Horford is still valuable, but he's aging. Porzingis has had injury concerns throughout his career. Neemias Queta had a fantastic summer showing, and there's potential there, but he's still unproven on the biggest stage. Luke Kornet is dependable in spots, but not someone you want logging heavy playoff minutes. And then there's Xavier Tillman, who is supposed to be a sneaky addition, but hasn't carved out a clear role. If Boston could flip some combination of those names into a more stable, impactful big, like Kessler, it would immediately raise the team's floor. And come playoff time, depth at the 5 becomes critical when rotations shorten and matchups tighten. It's not just a luxury. It's a necessity. That's why fans shouldn't be surprised if a deal goes down sooner rather than later. The Celtics know who they are. They've built a strong identity under Joe Mazzulla. Defense first, unselfish ball movement, elite shooting when everyone's clicking. But they've also seen how fragile that formula can be when the injuries hit or the matchups get tough. Just think back to last year's Eastern Conference Finals. There were moments when Boston looked unbeatable, and other times when the offense stagnated and defensive lapses let games slip away. The margins are razor thin in the playoffs, and Stevens knows that better than anyone. He's not looking to reinvent the wheel, just strengthen it where it's starting to wobble. One move that could symbolize that mindset is bringing back a player like SVI Mikhailiuk as part of a potential Utah deal. Now, is he going to win you a playoff series? Probably not. But does he understand the system, bring smart shooting off the bench, and come cheap? Absolutely. Sometimes the best moves are the simplest ones. Familiarity matters, especially in a locker room that values chemistry and cohesion. And if you can package someone like Hauser, who, again, is a valuable piece for Kessler, and get SVI as a bonus, that'll win on multiple levels. It's the kind of small adjustment that allows the stars to be stars without worrying about what's happening behind them on the bench. But before we continue, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest news about the Boston Celtics. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Rumors are swirling like a storm over Boston tonight, and the city's basketball faithful may want to hold onto their seats. Whispers from sources close to the locker room suggest that Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek freak, the unstoppable force of the recent EUROBASKET, might be making a seismic move to the Boston Celtics. If even a fraction of this chatter turns out true, the paint in TD Garden will never look the same again. Fans and analysts alike are scrambling to imagine the implications. Giannis, who dominated Europe with a blend of power, finesse, and unthinkable agility, could bring an entirely new dimension to the Celtics frontcourt. Think about it. A player who can bulldoze through defenses, stretch the floor, and finish well under the rim, all while having the versatility to guard almost anyone. The term paint-dominated isn't just hype. It could become literal. Opposing big men might need a map just to navigate around him. Boston insiders aren't confirming anything yet, and the front office has remained characteristically tight-lipped. But that hasn't stopped social media from erupting. Clips of Giannis EUROBASKET highlights are trending again, now tagged with green shamrocks and chants of Celtics Nation, get ready. Comment sections are flooded with debates, mock lineups, and feverish calculations about how the Greek superstar would fit alongside Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. The potential acquisition raises as many questions as it answers. How would Boston adjust its cap space? What's the chemistry like with an existing core? And most importantly, could this finally be the piece that turns Boston into an unstoppable force in the East? One thing is certain. If Giannis does land in Boston, every drive to the basket, every lob pass, and every fast break will feel like a seismic event in the league. For now, it's all smoke and whispers, the kind of rumor that fuels late-night sports debates and keeps fans hitting refresh on their feeds. But if the Celtics manage to lure the EuroBasket monster to the Garden, the NBA landscape might never recover. The paint will belong to Boston, and the league will tremble under Giannis' shadow. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Boston Celtics, please subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. We always appreciate your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.